Power fades, dynasties fall, recipes disappear. But once upon a time, these lunches ruled markets, palaces, and merchant tables across China. People waited all morning just to taste them. Today, most are gone or barely remembered. Let's rewind history and uncover the famous Chinese lunches that vanished with time, tradition, and changing tastes. The Flying Dragon Feast once meant you had arrived. Not wealthy, not important, but untouchable. This lunch appeared during imperial times, especially in the Ming and early Qing dynasties, and it was never meant for the public. Only top officials, military heroes, and favored guests saw this table. Everyone else just heard rumors. The name sounded mythical for a reason. There were no dragons on the plate, but the ingredients flew in from everywhere. Pheasant from the north, river fish from the south, rare mushrooms from deep forests, dried seafood carried for weeks to reach the capital. The center of the feast was layered, meat stacked on meat, fish wrapped in fish, dishes carved to look like movement. Everything pointed upward. Symbolism mattered. The dragon represented power, luck, and heaven's approval. This was not dinner, but rather a performance. Lunch could last hours. Between courses, poems were read, toasts were raised, deals were sealed. Your seat at this table meant protection and status. So why did it fade? The fall of the empire changed everything. After 1912, lavish official feasts became dangerous rather than impressive. New governments rejected symbolism tied to emperors. Ingredients became impossible to justify. Flying food across provinces for one meal suddenly looked obscene. Time moved on. Taste changed. Power shifted. Today, no restaurant serves the real Flying Dragon Feast. Only fragments survive in cookbooks and archives. The dragon never vanished. It just stopped flying at lunch. If you sat down for this lunch, you already knew one thing. You were important. The Manchu Han Imperial Feast peaked during the Qing dynasty, especially in the 1700s. It was created to unite Manchu rulers and Han officials, and the table carried the message. Power lived here. Lunch versions focused on heavy main dishes, large cuts of meat, rare seafood, complicated cooking methods. Dishes arrived non-stop, steamed, braised, roasted, carved to impress. Bear paw appeared on silver trays. Deer tendon shimmered in thick sauce. Sea cucumbers soaked for days before cooking. Bird's nest soup came clear and glowing. Whole lamb stretched across platters. No one rushed. Lunch lasted hours. You tasted. You paused. You watched servants move in perfect rhythm. Finishing every dish was never expected. Witnessing the scale was the point, but history moved faster than the table. By the late 1800s, hunting bans reduced ingredients. Costs rose. Public opinion shifted. After 1912, imperial symbolism became dangerous instead of prestigious. Excess stopped being admired. Today, restaurants copy the name, not the meaning. Modern versions shrink the menu and soften the story. The real main courses vanished with the dynasty. Next, lunch is smaller, quieter, and carried by hand. This lunch began long before noon. For centuries, especially during the Song and Ming dynasties, young scholars traveled for weeks to reach examination halls. Their future depended on one set of papers and one simple meal packed at home. The box was small, but careful. Rice cakes packed tightly so they would not spoil. Pickled vegetables for strength and balance. Dried meat sliced thin to last longer. Hard-boiled eggs wrapped in cloth to prevent cracking on rough roads. Nothing was random. Eggs symbolized success. Square rice cakes stood for stability. Sweet snacks hinted at good fortune. Mothers packed these lunches with quiet prayers folded between layers of food. Scholars ate outside exam halls, sitting on stone steps, leaning against walls, chewing slowly while listening to guards call names. Silence hung heavy. Every bite felt like pressure. Food here was not comfort, but rather was fuel for focus and courage. Then the world changed. The imperial examination system ended in 1905. Courtyards emptied. Paper replaced travel. The lunchbox lost its purpose overnight. Today, it survives only in old records and museum displays, a humble meal that once carried the weight of entire families. Next dish swims gently into history. 5 willows fish once ruled elegant lunch tables along the Yangtze River, especially during the Qing dynasty. Officials loved it, scholars praised it, chefs treated it like poetry. The name came from the cut. 5 ingredients sliced thin and long, shaped like willow leaves drifting in water. Bamboo shoots, ginger, mushrooms, scallions, ham. They floated gently over tender white fish in a light, sweet, and sour sauce. This was a lunch dish built for calm. It arrived steaming, but never loud. No heavy oil, no sharp spice, just balance. Sweet, tangy, soft, crisp, everything in harmony. Government officials favored it at midday banquets. Not too filling, not too flashy. Perfect for long afternoons of writing and meetings. You could eat it and still think clearly afterward. Chefs took pride in it. Knife work mattered. Timing mattered. The sauce had to coat without drowning. If one slice was wrong, the entire dish felt off. So why did it disappear? Fast cooking replaced slow skill. Lunch became rushed. Diners wanted stronger flavors and quicker results. This dish demanded patience. Restaurants stopped training chefs to make it properly. Today, it's rarely seen, mostly remembered in cookbooks and old menus. A fish dish that vanished because it was too gentle for modern lunch hours. Next lunch comes with a name and a story about a single woman. This lunch began with hardship. Song Sao fish soup traces back to the Southern Song dynasty around the 12th century in Hangzhou. The story centers on one woman, Widow Song, known simply as Song Sao. She sold fish soup to survive. Her soup was simple, fresh river fish, shredded just right, a light broth. Ginger, no waste, no show, just care. Officials noticed. Legend says an emperor tasted it and remembered the flavor long after. The soup made its way into palace kitchens. A street lunch turned imperial favorite. At midday, this soup made sense. Warm, light, comforting, easy to digest. Perfect for scholars and officials who needed energy without heaviness. The key was texture. Fish had to melt. Broth had to glow. Too thick, and it failed. Too thin, and it disappointed. So what happened? Palace kitchens changed. Dynasties fell. Recipes lost their hands. Fish quality declined. Shortcuts ruined balance. Today, restaurants sell versions of it, but rarely the real thing. The patience is gone. The hands are gone. A lunch born from survival became legend, then quietly slipped away. Next dish does something strange to noodles. Torn noodles came from the Northwest, where speed and strength mattered at lunch. Shemayan dates back centuries in Shaanxi and Gansu, eaten by farmers, soldiers, and travelers passing through dusty roads. Dough was stretched by hand and torn apart instead of cut. No knives needed, just arms, wrists, and rhythm. Lunch cooks worked fast. Dough slapped the table, torn strips flew into boiling water. A few minutes later, noodles rose thick and uneven. That texture was the point. The topping stayed simple. Chili oil, garlic, vinegar, sometimes lamb broth, sometimes nothing else at all. Hot, sharp, filling. This was fuel. Markets loved it at noon because it fed people quickly. Large bowls kept workers moving. No fine presentation. No patience required. So why did it fade? Factories replaced fields. Fast food replaced stalls. Precision noodles replaced handmade chaos. Torn noodles were unpredictable. Every bowl slightly different. Modern kitchens did not like that. Today, Cheimian survives mostly at home or in small shops run by stubborn hands. A lunch built on muscle and motion. Next dish cleans the palate and carried a color with meaning. Qing dumplings belong to a very specific moment on the calendar. Miss that moment, and the lunch was gone for another year. Qingjiao can be traced back to the Eastern Han period around the 1st and 2nd century, especially in regions near the Yellow River Basin. These dumplings appeared during early spring, close to Qingming Festival, when the first wild greens pushed through cold soil. The filling depended on place. In Henan and Shanxi, shepherd's purse dominated. In Jiangsu and Zhejiang, fresh mugwort took over. Every region used what grew nearby, and that made each lunch taste slightly different. The dough stayed plain. White flour, water, nothing else. All the color came from inside. Lunch was light on purpose. After months of salted vegetables and dried grains, people wanted freshness. These dumplings cleaned the palate. They woke the body. Timing mattered. Greens had to be picked the same day. Too old, and they turned bitter. Too young, and there was no flavor. Families went out at dawn to gather enough for lunch. As cities expanded in the 20th century, foraging faded. Fields disappeared. Seasonal eating faded with it. Store-bought vegetables replaced wild ones. Today, Qingjiao exists mostly as a memory. Some villages still make them each spring. Most people never taste the original. A lunch measured by weeks, not hours. Next dish does something unexpected with pickling. 8 treasure pickled cabbage was a winter lunch hero long before fridges existed. Records place it firmly in the late Ming dynasty, spreading widely through Beijing, Shaanxi, and Hebei by the 1600s. Northern winters hit early and stayed long. Fresh vegetables vanished by November. Pickling became the backup plan. Whole cabbages were salted, pressed, and sealed inside clay jars. After weeks of waiting, the treasures were added: dried chili for heat, garlic and ginger for bite, Sichuan pepper for numbness, rock sugar for balance, dried orange peel for aroma, goji berries for color, rice wine to wake everything up. Each household adjusted the mix. Lunch bowls cracked open with a sound. Crunch came first, then sour, then sweet, then a creeping heat. It sharpened the appetite when the cold dulled everything else. Merchants leaned on it at noon. Students paired it with plain rice. Workers needed it to cut through fatty winter meats. By the 20th century, refrigeration changed habits. Markets stayed green year-round. Waiting months for flavor no longer felt necessary. Quick pickles replaced deep ones. Today, true ba bao pao kai is rare. The jars are gone. The patience, too. Next lunch pretends to be something it's not. This lunch played tricks with expectations. Jingjiang fish shreds appeared in Beijing during the mid-Qing dynasty, becoming widely known by the late 1800s. Despite the name, no fish was involved. The illusion mattered more than the ingredient. Lean pork was sliced thin and pulled long by knife work alone. Stir-fried just enough to dry the surface, tossed in sweet fermented bean sauce. Finished with scallions and cucumber slivers, served with thin wheat pancakes for wrapping. At noon, the smell drew crowds. Sweet first, savory next. A soft crunch followed by tenderness. Easy to eat, easy to share. Officials liked it because it felt indulgent without heaviness. Street vendors liked it because speed meant profit. Fish symbolized abundance and status. Pork was cheaper and everywhere. The name sold the dream. By the 1950s, tastes shifted. Pancake-wrapped lunches declined. Sauced dishes felt old-fashioned. Faster meals took over urban life. Today, Jingjiang Rusi survives mostly as memory. Many eat versions. Few understand the trick. A lunch built on illusion. Next one shines like gold. Gold coin meat showed up on lunch tables during the Tang and Song dynasties, especially in wealthy regions like Suzhou and Hangzhou. Its name came from appearance. Pork slices cut thick and round, cooked until glossy, stacked like ancient copper coins. Midday meals mattered in business centers. Merchants wanted something impressive yet filling. This dish delivered both. Pork belly simmered slowly in soy sauce, sugar, and rice wine until the surface shined. Fat turned translucent. Lean stayed tender. Lunch plates arrived warm and heavy. Sweet aroma filled the room. Chopsticks slowed down. People chewed longer. Coin shapes symbolized wealth and good fortune. Ordering this at lunch meant confidence. You expected success later in the day. By the late Song period, the dish spread through urban kitchens. Restaurants competed on color and shine. The deeper the gloss, the better the cook. Then time moved on. By the early 20th century, sweet braised pork fell out of midday favor. Lighter lunches took over. Long braising did not fit factory hours or rushed schedules. Today, Janziru appears more at banquets than noon tables. The coins remain. The lunchtime shine faded. Next, lunch skips meat entirely and pours tea instead. In Hangzhou during the 12th and 13th centuries, lunch sometimes came with no plates at all. The Southern Song Court turned tea into a midday ritual. Officials, scholars, and artists gathered around low tables during breaks. The focus stayed light. Tea first, small bites second. Steamed buns, sesame cakes, candied nuts, dried fruit. Nothing heavy. nothing greasy. The goal was clarity. Tea competitions flourished around 1200 CE. Foam thickness mattered, color mattered, flavor mattered. People judged cups the way wine is judged today. Lunch was calm, conversations flowed, poetry surfaced, ideas moved faster than stomachs filled. This worked because schedules allowed it. Government offices paused, cities slowed down. Noon belonged to reflection. The rhythm collapsed after the Yuan conquest in 1279. Political systems changed, work hours tightened, tea culture shifted toward private spaces. Today, this lunch exists only in paintings and texts. Modern days move too fast for foam and poems. Next dish goes back to the road and follows merchants instead of scholars. Along the trade routes of Shaanxi during the late Ming and early Qing dynasties, merchants needed lunches that moved as fast as they did. By the 1600s, dry fried rice became the answer. No sauce, no soup, no delay. Rice was fried hard with oil until every grain separated. Dried scallions, bits of preserved meat, and occasional beans joined the wok. Salt did most of the work. The result traveled well and stayed edible for hours. Merchants ate it by roadsides at noon. One bowl, one pause, then back to deals and distances. Heavy food slowed thinking. Wet food spoiled. Dry rice survived. Ask yourself this: when every minute costs money, how do you eat? This lunch held control and speed in each bite. Caravan leaders loved it. Account books stayed nearby. Chopsticks moved quickly. As transport modernized in the 20th century, roadside meals changed. Trains replaced caravans. Restaurants replaced baskets. Rice softened again. Today, true dry fried rice appears mostly in memories. Modern fried rice carries sauce and steam. The merchant version needed neither. Next lunch turns cold by design. Inside the Forbidden City in Beijing, lunch followed rules stricter than law. By the early Qing dynasty around the 1700s, imperial kitchens served cold dishes on purpose. Temperature mattered. Hot food suggested indulgence. Cold food suggested control. Meat was cooked early in the morning, then chilled and sliced thin before noon. Duck, chicken, pork, everything was arranged precisely. No steam, no rush. Vinegar, scallions, and light sauces sat on the side. Flavor stayed sharp and clean. Timing ruled everything. Emperors ate according to ceremony, not hunger. Meetings ran long. Ritual came first. Cold dishes waited patiently without spoiling. Order stayed intact. Officials accepted this silently. Lunch was not about comfort. It reinforced hierarchy. Food reminded everyone where they stood. Ask yourself this: when your schedule controls 1,000 people, do you even notice the temperature? Cold lunches also limited excess. You ate slower. Smaller portions felt natural. Appetite stayed in check. By the late 1800s, meanings began to change. Western dining habits entered court life. Hot food returned. Refrigeration blurred symbolism. Cold dishes lost their message. After 1912, the imperial system collapsed. Palace kitchens emptied. The cold-cut lunch disappeared with the throne. Today, it survives only in court records and paintings. A lunchtime designed to keep power distant and perfectly chilled. Next dish stretches into long strands and carries the smell of the sea. Along the coast of Fujian during the late Qing dynasty, lunch often smelled like the sea. By the 1800s, oyster hair vermicelli had already earned its place at midday tables in Guangzhou and Fuzhou. The name came from texture. Fine vermicelli tangled with shredded dried oysters until the strands looked like hair floating in broth. This lunch was fast and nourishing. Vermicelli soaked quickly. Oysters added depth without heaviness. Ginger warmed the body. Rice wine lifted the aroma. Fishermen and dock workers favored it before heading back to work. Timing mattered. Oysters had to be dried properly the season before. Too wet, and they spoiled. Too dry, and they lost flavor. Noon bowls depended on months of preparation. As cities modernized in the 20th century, drying techniques changed. Shortcuts replaced slow prep. Fresh seafood became more popular than preserved. The texture that defined the dish disappeared. Today, most people know oyster noodles, not oyster hair. The real version survives only in coastal households that still dry oysters the old way. a lunch tied to tide schedules and waiting hands. Next dish breaks open an egg and hides 3 surprises inside. In Hunan province during the late Ming period, lunch leaned bold and clever. By the 1600s, 3 treasures egg buns had become a favorite midday bite in Changsha and surrounding towns. The name promised mystery. Each bun delivered it. Egg wrappers folded around 3 fillings: pork, shrimp, chives, sometimes pork, mushroom, bamboo shoot. The exact trio changed by household, but 3 stayed sacred. Lunch cooks worked fast. Eggs spread thin in pans. Fillings placed with care. Folding happened in seconds. Steam rose briefly before plates hit tables. These buns fit noon perfectly. Protein for energy, light enough to keep moving. Spicy dipping sauce sealed the deal. Hunan heat never stayed quiet. Ask this: when time is short, do you want surprise or predictability? As factory schedules replaced home kitchens in the 20th century, labor-intensive lunches faded. Pre-made snacks won. Egg buns took too much handwork. Today they appear mostly at festivals or nostalgic kitchens. Lunch moved on. The treasures stayed hidden. In Cheozhou during the Qing dynasty, especially by the 1700s, lunch sometimes arrived floating. The winter melon boat earned its name honestly. A whole winter melon was hollowed, shaped like a vessel, and filled with minced pork, shrimp, mushrooms, and salted fish. Then it was steamed slowly until everything blended. Midday meals mattered in merchant households. Business paused at noon. Food needed to impress guests without slowing conversation. This dish did both. Light broth gathered inside the melon. Natural sweetness balanced the savory filling. Chopsticks dipped in and out like oars. Preparation started early. Melons were selected at dawn. Filling mixed carefully. Steaming took patience. Lunch waited for no shortcuts. Ask yourself this: how much effort would you put into a meal meant to disappear in minutes? As the 20th century accelerated life, this dish faded. Whole melons took time. Single portions sold better. Restaurants chose speed over spectacle. Today, the winter melon boat appears only at banquets or family celebrations. Lunch tables no longer wait for steaming boats to dock. Next dish lands quietly and traps rice inside steam. In Shanghai, during the early 20th century, lunch followed clocks, factory whistles, and dock schedules. Speed mattered, warmth mattered. Steamed wonton rice fit perfectly into that rhythm. This lunch showed up around the 1910s and 1920s, especially near textile mills and river ports. Vendors worked with steam baskets stacked high. Bowls were filled with leftover rice from the morning. Fresh wontons stuffed with pork and greens were placed right on top. Everything went into the steamer together. By noon, the rice soaked up meat juices. Wonton skins turned soft and glossy. Steam did all the work. No frying. No extra sauce. One bowl was enough. Workers liked it because nothing spilled. Vendors liked it because everything cooked at once. Lunch stayed fast and efficient. Ask yourself this: when you have 10 minutes to eat, what matters more than heat and fullness? As Shanghai modernized after the 1950s, factory cafeterias took over. Dishes separated again. Wontons returned to soup. Rice returned to plates. Today, this lunch is almost forgotten. Steam faded, schedules changed. Next lunch turns louder, saltier, and unmistakably Sichuan. In Qing dynasty Sichuan, particularly around Chengdu and Chongqing in the 1700s, salted vegetable soup was a dependable midday meal shaped by climate and geography. The region's humidity and heat made heavy lunches impractical, and preserved mustard greens, known historically as yakai, became essential. These vegetables were salted and fermented months in advance, often during late autumn, then stored in ceramic jars to last through the year. At lunch, cooks added the greens directly to boiling water, sometimes with pork bones or tofu if available. Chili oil and crushed garlic followed, producing a sharp, sour broth that revived the appetite quickly. This meal fit working schedules well. Farmers drank it before returning to fields. Porters near the Yangtze docks finished bowls in minutes, and shopkeepers relied on it between customers. Fermentation made the dish reliable during poor harvests and supply shortages. Its decline began in the late 20th century when refrigeration and fresh produce became common and lower salt diets gained popularity. Today, salted vegetable soup remains mostly in home kitchens, remembered as a practical lunch built for Sichuan's environment rather than presentation. In Ningbo during the late Ming dynasty, around the 1600s, 7 Stars pastry developed as a coastal lunch item served in tea houses near the port. Ningbo's role as a maritime trade center shaped eating habits, with merchants and sailors favoring small, shareable foods that paired well with tea. The pastry consisted of 7 bite-sized cakes arranged in a circular pattern, each filled with a different ingredient, such as red bean, black sesame, jujube, lotus seed, walnut, citrus peel, and sugar. Bakers prepared these pastries early in the morning, as texture mattered greatly. By noon, the cakes reached peak softness. The variety allowed diners to eat slowly, shifting between flavors rather than committing to a large portion. This suited midday breaks that balanced business discussions with brief rest. As Ningbo expanded international trade in the early 20th century, Western baking styles entered the city. Larger cakes and uniform slices replaced smaller assortments, and 7 Stars pastry shifted away from daily lunches toward festivals and special occasions. It survives mainly in local bakeries and historical records today, marking a time when lunch emphasized balance and symbolism. Fish pork congee became a common lunch in Guangdong during the Qing dynasty, especially in Guangzhou in the Pearl River Delta in the 1700s. The region's warm climate and busy commercial life favored meals that were filling but easy to digest. Congee met that need by providing steady energy without heaviness. Rice was simmered for hours until the grains broke down completely. Pork bones added depth during cooking, and fresh river fish was introduced near the end to preserve tenderness. Ginger was often included to balance richness, while soy sauce remained minimal. The result was a smooth, savory bowl suited to long afternoons of work. Street vendors began cooking congee before dawn, serving office clerks, dock workers, merchants, and elders by midday. The dish adapted well to seasonal changes, with fish varieties shifting based on river supply. As fried foods and quicker lunches gained popularity in the late 20th century, congee gradually moved to breakfast hours. Its role as a lunch faded, though the dish itself never disappeared. These lunches faded, but the reasons behind them feel familiar. Food always mirrors power, pressure, and personality. Just like the meals chosen by China's leaders during their reigns, lunch quietly reflected its time. When leaders ate differently, so did everyone else. So whose plate shaped history more than we realize? Find out in this next video right here.